Oh, this is gonna be a pain in the ass to hold. Whatever. TH0. As I predicted in my previous video, Arcane Season 2 is just as political and radical as Season 1. However, rather than focusing more on the grander aspects of political ideologies, Season 2 becomes much more of a personal character study in politics, leaning itself more into specific tropes of individuals in politics, rather than the general concept of politics that Season 1 does, and it specifically leans into the politics of war. War is a divisive and complex, especially when looking at both the personal and political underlying aspects of war. War is defined by tragedy, violence, opposing sides, and power. War has more to it, but war fundamentally is about opposition and the us against them mentality, when in reality, war is two sides of the same coin which refuse to acknowledge one another. The first season of Arcane spent its limited time addressing the subject and category of the inevitable civil war that would take place in Season 2, with its build-up and pressure boiling between Zahn and Piltover, but Season 2 leans fully into that boiling point and then takes the time and delicacy to understand what it means for each character, what war means. In my first video, I'll be using specific characters to explain the figures of war and politics and further prove my point. No one wins in war. It never is the best option, but some do profit, leading to my first character, Mbessa, the war profiteer. Mbessa, as a character in Season 1, is introduced as someone to not be trusted. Mel holds disdain and hate towards her own mother and refuses to allow her to bring a war-torn life in which she has grown up on back to her doorstep. She was right to do so, and we find this out in Season 2. Mbessa spends much of her time in Season 1 fear-mongering over the inevitable war that will happen between Piltover and Zahn. The inevitable war that she helps manufacture, that is. Mbessa is the perfect example of those who turn war into a dispute, often painted as noble to take part in, and shows us what war really is, a means to an end for somebody to profit. Mbessa does not live nor care for the fate of Zahn or Piltover. She has no horse in the game of who wins. All Mbessa wants is the superior weapon to be created. Whether that is Shimmer or Hextech, she is unsure. But she doesn't care as long as she gets her hands on whatever proves to be the better weapon. Mbessa is the perfect stand-in for the true malice of war, as someone who has spent an entire life only knowing war and moreover knows it more intimately than any character and most viewers can ever understand it. She has won lots, but she has also been on the losing side, both as a foot soldier as well as a lieutenant or general. The intimate connection Mbessa has with war trumps her own intimacy with her children, people in which she claims to do all this for, and she's not entirely lying about that. Mbessa at her core is a tragic character. All she knows is war, and so that is how she conducts herself in the world. She does love her children, and there was true care and concern for the soldiers and Caitlyn, but at the end of the day, all is fair in war, and that's why she's willing to go to such egregious ranks, betray and sacrifice her own children, not because she doesn't love them, but because that's all Mbessa has ever known. This isn't even meant to gain pity for Mbessa, but rather to understand evil war truly is, that even someone who is in control of most of our characters in conflicts is still at the mercy of war. Similar to Season 1, addiction is an undertone in many storylines and storytelling, and Mbessa is one of them. She has become a slave to the idea and profit of war, and resulting in her using her position to orchestrate and create a war in which she can win yet again. Mbessa shocks the viewer and surprises the characters so many times, not because anyone doesn't expect her to act the way she does, but because she acts perfectly, as though she knows what will happen before it happens. And she is truly the game master of this war and of all the conflicts in Season 2. From the attack on the funeral, to placing Caitlyn in the forefront of Piltover, to the weaponization of Hextech and Shimmer, to even the final battle in which Victor only loses due to an unforeseen circumstances on Mbessa's part, she has always played the game flawlessly, rarely losing until she finally does. It is when she has been so successful for so long and how she has gotten so good at creating chess pieces who are willing to do what is necessary. Caitlin Kierman spends most of Season 2 making drastic character changes from the Season 1 that we once knew her. The once empathetic, patient, kind girl that we've been introduced to has been scorned. She is hurt, and hurt people know not but how to hurt others. This isn't specific to just Caitlin either. Rather, it's kind of meant to be a reference to Piltover and Zahn. They have both lost in these fights. Everyone is hurt and everyone wants some sort of vengeance, justice, some method of revenge for what happened to them. Yet none of them understand how to obtain that until War gives them an answer, and Bessa gives them an answer. Mbessa gives Zahn the opportunity to fight back. Mbessa feels the underlying tension between the nations. Mbessa gives Caitlin a shot at getting Jinx, and she has a shot that Caitlin has failed before. Caitlin is the perfect pawn for War. She faced a loss that was inconceivable to her, and she has someone to blame for that loss. She has a way to manifest her rage and grief onto one person. She is hurt, she is irrational, and she is a person of great power. She is an easy target to be a weapon used in war. The Kierman name has weight and value to it, and it has a reigning matriarch, and she is the reigning matriarch. All the power lies in her hands, and War allows her to do something with that power. This allows Caitlin to be our stand-in for all of Piltover in this war, gives her the right to take the reins of power from the council, and gives her the authority to act on her grief. Not just her grief, but everyone's grief, and she will act in their stead. So Caitlin does act in grief, but she fails in grief as well, further falling to the mercy of War. Alone, she cannot achieve her goal. However, with the help of someone more familiar, maybe she can. We see Caitlin begin to waver in her judgment as she gets closer to Mbessa, as she sees the type of person in which War can make you to be, but she falls into the no coming back category of hate and resentment. She agreed to be a symbol to her people. She agreed to represent the hate and resentment towards Zahn, and she can't go back now. After all, she was willing to poison the people of Zahn to obtain her goals. She was willing to go all the way, so she can no longer afford to question if she's still willing to, and if what she's doing is right or wrong, even if she does. She has become the very victim of war in which we wish to escape. She has become a symbol. Now, in contrast, Jinx takes on a role of a symbol of a revolution, which Zahn has been slowly but surely working towards all of its time as a nation and or lesser nation to a greater nation. After all, she's the one who lowered the council that sat so high down to the level that they've always looked down upon. Jinx was the catalyst for so much oppression we've seen the Zahnites face of Season 2. Hence the Chembearings being so willing to sacrifice her as a symbol of peace, but that's not the only reason. The Chembearings may not be as influential as Silco, but they do understand how to obtain power in Zahn, and the best way is through fear and distrust, and using that to your own advantage. If Zahn is not unified, it means the Chembearings have a shot at holding more power in the Undercity, and therefore giving Jinx to the people's savior, if you will, to Piltover would benefit the Chembearings by getting both Piltover off their backs, as well as leaving the people without a hero. This is why Jinx's role as a symbol to the people of Zahn's frustration and rage specifically works so well when she can unify Zahn if she wanted to. But as with most symbols in our lifetime, it's not a role you choose, but rather one thrusted upon you. Jinx became a symbol via a boiling pot where she was the water that exploded out of that pot. She lost all of her family, all of the people she loved to Topside, and she was going to be damned if she let them get away with it again. Jinx was the average Zahnite. The difference is Jinx had the opportunity, and as every Zahnite would, she took that opportunity. Another important thing of note, in times of struggle and chaos, many people need someone or something to look to for guidance. In a time where there is no faith in ourselves, we need others to give us faith that we're missing. Jinx holds that spot as someone who has caused the most damage and harm to Piltover, has gotten the revenge and get back than anyone in the entire history of Zahn. Jinx brought down the council. Jinx fought head-on-head with enforcers. Jinx saved the people of Zahn from wrongful convictions that they faced. Jinx is a Zahnite. And Jinx is a symbol not unfamiliar to Zahn. Zahn has always had some religious undertones in reference to the character Janna, a character of mythos who has previously saved Zahn. Where Janna has not appeared, Jinx has taken her place to serve and to save the people. Religion is yet another institution in which can benefit and thrive from war, as to answer the prayers of those in doubt, as to give faith to those who have lost it all, as to give yet another symbol to people without a cause. This is why Jinx became an accidental symbol, where Victor became an intended savior. Victor's comparison to Jesus Christ in appearance and approach and ideology is no accident and is meant to truly be our stand-in for a messiah in war. As I discussed with Jinx, in times of struggle, we look to have someone else to give us faith, and who better than the man who can physically and mentally heal all those negatively impacted by the living conditions of the Undercity. Not to mention his strict resistance to all forms of violence and his general positive beliefs for what he and his community can be, not just for themselves, but for the Undercity. Where the Jinxers wish to get back at Piltover and fight the power, the followers of Victor wish to live in spite of their conditions, wish to find peace in spite of the war around them. Something that has never been given an option to them. Victor represents those who don't care for the violence and rather care to survive, dream to live, and want to achieve peace, alien and object from what they know. He creates a community of like-minded individuals, but this can also result in them becoming closed off to the world around them. For you ignore the world around you, you are bound to become ignorant and naive, something that plagues Victor's community of peace, as they allow for the very people that wish to cause them harm into their community. It becomes a community of ego and assumption. No one will cause harm onto them, which is proven to be false. This isn't to say that Victor and his community's ideology is incorrect nor immoral. However, it is to say it's unrealistic. Victor's faith made him unable to save those around him, and then his incapability to do so resulted in him using his state as a messiah to become yet another weapon in someone else's war. He becomes a servant of war, someone who, although has no intention to fight in a war, will eventually be brought into the all-encompassing vortex that is war. Vi is one of few characters that goes through little changes in season 1 to 2, but it is really true to Vi's nature. She is a defensive fighter, she is a defensive person. Vi, from the day one, has always acted second. Never the person to throw the first punch, always the one to throw the second. Vi reacts, not predicts. Vi is also a character never truly driven by the concept of right or wrong, or having strong morals or morality. Rather, she is motivated by her own sense of self and what she believes to be her purpose, a protector. There's no surprise that being raised by the savior of the Undercity, you become selfless to a fault and more dedicated to others than yourself and your own sense of self. This is why Vi becomes a servant of war, being forced upon her. Vi truly has no end goal like most characters in this series, no action in which she desires to take in Arcane Season 2, and rather she wishes to keep the small amount of peace in which she has found in her life, that peace. She wishes to keep what she has, and when she loses it, she loses herself. Vi joins Caitlyn in gassing her own people because she is weak. She wants to keep what her and Kate have as what they were, and so she will sacrifice a part of herself for that peace. She protects Jinx from Vander because she was willing to lose her when she saw nothing of Powder left, but not when she accepted that Jinx is also her sister, just as Powder is. Vi longs to keep what was, not look for what could be. Vi will react to the punch, but never throw the first one. Vi will take part in a war, but she will never start one. She is willing to fight for what she loves, but like her father, she is not willing to sacrifice what it takes for what is right. Vi is dragged into war for what she loves, whereas Savika is dragged into war for what she believes is right. queen, my fucking season 2 favorite Savika motherfucker got a mention because she didn't get one in the first season. Savika, from the moment we meet her, has been dedicated to the nation of Zon more than both Vander and Silco combined. Savika has her purpose and she will die for that purpose, as she has proven both in season 1, jumping in front of Silco to save his life, as well as in season 2, when she pleads and practically begs Jinx to become the savior that Zon has always wanted and needed. Unlike Vi, she doesn't care what the cost is and what it will take. She doesn't care to keep her own peace of mind. She wants what is right. She wants her people's liberation, something that no one has ever truly fought for in her lifetime. So by default, she will. She never expected to become some leader or savior. She didn't care for who was that martyr, who got the titles or the credit. What she cared about was her people. What she cared about was Zon. This isn't to say that characters such as Silco or Vander didn't care for their people and didn't care for the nation of Zon. They did, but they did in a way that numbed them. They did in an egotistical way. Savika was truly selfless and had no ego in her faith of what it meant to have a nation of Zon. Rather, she would give anything to achieve that goal, something that makes her and Vi opposites, but also exactly the same. For Savika, it was always Zon, and for Vi, it was always the people she loved. Vander didn't dare to bite the hand that fed him. Savika would gnaw the whole arm off. Where Silco wouldn't sacrifice his daughter for Zon, Savika would sacrifice every last aspect of her own humanity to give her people freedom that they've always dreamed of. Savika is a victim of war in the same way that Vi is, because the people around them will always take advantage of them or use them because they understand they will never be the voice that is heard. Rather, where Vi will fight for her people, Savika will fight for her nation. It's why she won't give up Jinx, because she knows that won't truly solve the problem. It's why she at first won't fight alongside Piltover, because she knows they will continue to wrong her and her people. It's why she eventually fights. Not for herself, but for Zon. Without Piltover, there is no Zon, and it's why after all the fight and after all the time and life that she has dedicated to the war, she finally gets a place at the table. Not a place that is respected nor listened to, but a place she fought for, a place she deserves. Even with Savika getting to have a position of power and a place at the table doesn't mean that she and her people did not suffer tremendously. After all, these people have been cursed simply by being born. These are the people in which she represents. They are the true victims of war. They are the Zonites. Echo serves as the perfect person when it comes to Arcane. No one has ever said anything bad about Echo, and that's for a good reason. He is literally just trying to make his life and others better. His sin is daring to believe that he can be better and should be, and that his people should live a better life, and this sin weighs heavy on him. It is also tragically a sin that is based in delusion. As established in the first video, Piltover will never see the Undercity and Zon as a nation of people, and rather they will always see them as beneath Piltover. This is well established throughout the series, but even re-established in the end, where we see the current reigning council look down upon Savika for even daring to sit at their table. If a seat at the table isn't taken seriously, what will make Zon be taken seriously? Where does that leave the believers, those who are hopeful for a better life? A life where hard drugs is not the only solution. A life where crime is not the most sustainable option for survival. A life where one can live and not just survive. Echo dares to dream for something that is so unattainable, that is like a tree, will only blossom long after those who planted it are dead. It's why I think Heimendinger and Echo are such a perfect pair. The pupil of dreams and aspirations, bigger than himself, and the one who has capabilities and ideas to change the world, but hasn't been given the time or chance needed, and the professor who has seen it all and has given multiple opportunities and abilities, and yet has still failed on his road along the way. It's also why Heimendinger's sacrifice is so moving, as one who has lived for over 400 years has so much more to lose than a 20-year-old. Heimendinger also knows that that 20-year-old has so much more to accomplish than he could have ever done in his 400 years of life. which speaks for Echo as a player in this war. He has no place in it, but also has no choice in it. Not that anyone has a place in war, but we often see those who are innocent more than we consider a normal person or even ourselves to be innocent be dragged into war. They have no place in being in, and Echo is a prime example of this. A man that, unlike most characters, always looks forward and hopes for better, no matter how wronged he is. In that way, he is like a child forced into conflict simply because he stumbled upon the wrong people who cared for her but couldn't protect her. Isha. Isha is a character that almost needs no explanation to be in this section of the video, since at the end of the day, she is a child, and universally it's understood that children deserve to be treated correctly and kindly. It's why our society has such harsh stances on crimes related to child abuse and pedophilia. This is all for good reasons, but I have her here for one reason and one reason only. War doesn't care. War at its core is about defeating the other side, and it does not matter the cost in which it will take, including losing our own humanity. Isha was a child who died by the hands of war, but she also was able to go out in a way in which she wanted to do something very little other children get to do. Isha was loved and cared for, something most children in Zon get robbed of. Isha is still an outlier, but an outlier of someone tragically common. Isha is a child whose death we got to see in Arcane, but there are so many children in the Undercity dying of sickness, starvation, and dehydration, and so on and so forth, of so many other illnesses, sorry. Jinx was one of these children, and Isha is lucky that Jinx found her, otherwise she would have been as well. Isha serves as a reminder to us of how cruel and terrible war is, but also how times before war can be just as cruel and awful. Neither are right, and no child should nor deserves to die such an early death, but the truth is they do. They are, and they are the true victims of war. Finally, it feels the most apt to end the video about how fundamentally wrong war is by mentioning the perpetrators of war, the real evil behind war, Noxia and the Black Rose, aka other governments and sometimes our own. There are a few things in my life that have proven to be true, and one of those is war. It feels as though war is always a ever-looming idea and threat around the world, and although correct socially is incorrect objectively. See, institutions such as the Black Rose and Noxia are dedicated to war, as to be constant and at a grab of power and constant state of domination, as they fear not being on top and eventually being beaten. That fear is too great for them. To make these ends meet, we see them use other countries and their own people to serve as means to an end and provide them with more influence. Influence is power, and even though we are seeing the world-ending war happen, all Noxia and the Black Rose care about is putting Mbessa, an out-of-her-death general, in her place. Not the very real problem that can be caused by Victor obtaining Hex Tech. Although we don't have a confirmed answer, we are left with only two real answers. Neither are the lesser of a greater evil, and rather both are malice and insidious. First, there's the potential of ignorance. Maybe Noxia is unaware of how dangerous Victor and his glorious evolution is. In which case, we could argue it's not entirely their fault. However, we see Noxia and the Black Rose have methods to interfere and choose not to. Meaning, this ignorance is not for lack of capabilities, but rather, much worse, lack of effort. They could prevent this world-ending cataclysmic event, but that could interfere with the war they are fighting and could result in their loss. They pride themselves as a nation based in conquering, and that would be shattered in order to save the very world in which they aim to conquer. And if ignorance is to blame for this, that means that ego was more valuable to Noxia than the world itself. Regardless of whether Noxia cares for the people of Zon or Piltover, which theoretically, if it plans to conquer it, it should, they are willing to risk their own people's safety for the very existence to prove themselves as a dominant military power. They are willing to sacrifice it all just to be the strongest, something we have seen mirrored in real-life wars. Ego is something inherent in war. It is all based on believing one side is better than another in some way, whether that be ideologically or raw military might. It is egotistical to go to war. Then there's the second option of hubris. This option is Noxia knows it can defeat whatever Victor does and becomes. What Victor is doing is a calamity at the bare minimum, mind you. But Noxus, being the nation that has caused and fought its own calamities, is rather comfortable with the concept of world-ending problems. And there is a very real chance that their inactiveness is based on knowing no matter what threat Victor is, they can confidently defeat it. Even seeing the dimension in which Jace goes to and travels to, we all see is remnants of what once was of Piltover and Zaun. We gain no real perspective on the greater world as a whole and Runeterra at large, and for all we know, Noxus is capable of wiping Piltover and Zaun out in one fell swoop, which is why they have no cause for concern. Yes, this is still a lack of action due to ego, but it's mainly hubris. And it's inaction based on ultimate supremacy, and ultimate supremacy in which no nation should ever have. A nation that needs to not concern itself with other nations is a nation that need not exist. It is a nation that should not hold the world in its hands, and a nation that can bear to allow the world to burn around it as it remains unmoved. If I need to explain why that's a problem, I fear you lost the plot of Arcane in Season 1. Noxus is a beast that no matter the answer will never be satiated, and I can't wait to see what they do with the Noxus series. Not to bring my previous video for hopefully the last time, but none of this, as again, is about Arcane. To quote myself, art reflects life, and sometimes life reflects art. Arcane makes poignant narratives on what war means, and it is never beneficial to anyone but the Mbessas and Noxus and Black Roses of the world, and frankly, we don't want to benefit those people. Although I say this as Mbessa being one of my favorite characters in this series, it's because she's so wrong that I love her so much. She is a person raised by her experiences and surroundings, a mother who loves but doesn't know how to. Arcane isn't confused about anything. Arcane isn't confused about anything it says, and just as it was in Season 1, its messaging is there, and I hope you get to see it. As I did last time, I won't tell you everything about Arcane. I won't break down every little moment of every character and the story. I do think the narrative will speak for itself, and what I will say is that the narrative was good, even if cuts were forced onto us and something we have to endure. As someone who cried from joy, sadness, and frustration, I say thank you, Arcane. You came into my life and became something that will influence myself and so many other people for the rest of our lives. Finally, I will say if you love Arcane, support it. Your dollar, and I mean every single dollar, matters. And now, more than ever, creatives need you to prove how much good art matters. Arcane got shafted and was meant to be so much longer, and it sucks. But I hope it can prove to the higher-ups that want to make stuff like this and want to make money that good art is more valuable than quantity, if you will. As long as we support it, maybe next time the next year creatives can be given all the time they need and all the resources they need to make the best series they can, to make another Arcane, if you will. With that being said, I've been Enigma Bazaar, and goodbye! Be sure to like and subscribe. Hit that. Hold up. What's it? Phase up? How do I phase out? Oh, wait. Is that it? Phase out. Minding my business, so pretty. You're praying, I'm on the sake of